Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Jeffrey Epstein Show. I'm your host, Bobbycapucci, and this is Daily Drop number 175. We've talked a lot about Bradley Edwards' new book, Relentless Pursuit, that just released today. And I've spent the last few hours listening to that book, and it's a fascinating listen. And it really gives you a look inside, behind the scenes, as to what was going on in the case from the perspective of somebody who was involved for almost from the beginning. So it's definitely an interesting listen so far, and I'm sure that if you're reading it or listening to it, you're probably thinking the same thing. And we've talked a lot about what's coming up in that book from the teaser articles that Bradley Edwards has published inside of the Daily Mail and other publications, and the stuff that we have heard has been, it's eye-opening stuff. Look, it's one thing to hear this kind of stuff and get this information from a journalist and from somebody who got it secondhand, third hand, but it's a whole different story when you're getting it from a lawyer who was working on the case, or even more so when you get it from the survivors themselves. But Bradley Edwards has been involved in this case for a very long time, and he's basically consumed by it, searching for justice for these survivors and trying to bring this criminal operation down. And this book, Relentless Pursuit, as well as Filthy Rich by James Patterson, they're just two books that you definitely have to read. And if you're interested in this case, you're doing yourself a big disservice if you do not read those books, because they're super informative. Filthy Rich gives you a complete timeline and blueprint for how Jeffrey Epstein operated within Palm Beach, especially with the girls that he was bringing in from Palm Beach, the young high school girls and the girls that were a little younger. It gives you just a real good look behind the scenes at what was going on, and you get to hear from some of the people that aren't really talked about in the mainstream media, in the legacy media, or in even the articles that we read, unless you dig back to the original case. And those are the police chief, Ryder, and the detectives and the officers in Florida who really wanted this to be a federal case and who thought that things were not kosher with the situation in regards to Epstein getting the plea deal and then the immunity deal on top of it. There was a lot of players down there that were good people, and they were working in the interest of justice and in the interest of these survivors. And we don't hear a lot about them when these articles are published, in the present. So when you go back and you read that book, Filthy Rich, it gives you more of a perspective and more context about who it is we're talking about. And with the new book, Relentless Pursuit, from what we've heard so far and what I've listened to via the audio copy on Audible, it's another book like Filthy Rich where it's a must-have, a book where you have to add it to your catalog, a book where you have to read it. And this first time around, I'm just going to listen through it. I'm going to power through it because it's so interesting, and then I'll listen to it a second time around, and I'll take some notes and maybe a little deeper dive into what Bradley Edwards is saying. Because right now, of course, the first time through, I'm just excited to get the information and to, read the book. But the next time around, it won't be for pleasure. It'll be more of a studying situation. Because what we found out so far from Bradley Edwards in these articles that he has published in the Daily Mail and elsewhere, the information has been fantastic. It's been very important information. It confirms a lot of things that we've talked about. It makes us understand that we're certainly on the right path. And it also should give us some faith that there are good actors out there. There are good people that are, involved in the justice system one way or the other, that are still trying to pursue justice here, that have not forgotten about this case, that won't forget about this case. And these are the kind of people like Bradley Edwards that are, the kind of folks that we're going to need to push the ball over the goal line and get some justice here. Because they're the kind of people that, the lawyers in this case for the survivors are the sort of people that know how to navigate the justice system. They're the ones who know how to, make moves to counter the moves being made by people like Dershowitz. And all we can do as independent content creators or, independent journalists or investigative journalists, all we can do is dig into the case and provide as much context and as much information as we can to the public. And hopefully that information can be used to, follow down leads and chase down leads. And, that's how it works, right? That's what happens when people start reporting on cases. We saw it with Julie K. Brown reviving this case. If it wasn't for her reporting, this case more than likely would have never been reopened, and we wouldn't even be talking about this right now. So you see the effects that reporting on a case and bringing it out for the public to see how important that is and why investigative journalism is so important. So, like I say all the time here, all I can do is what I can do, and that is pop on here every day, update you guys on the case, give you my analysis of what we're reading, and hopefully keep the case in the public eye, hopefully keep the interest going in the case, because without that, without the public's interest in this, and without the public outcry, there's never going to be justice. So we have to just keep drudging along, and we have to keep pushing, and, I'm just here to report the facts, folks. Whatever they're reporting in the news is what I report here on the podcast. But instead of just reading the article, I analyze it as we're reading it. And I give you the way I see things. I break it down the way I see things and where the evidence has led me. And it's been an eye-opening process for me, especially since I've started doing the daily drops where I'm here every single day with you guys. It's been just a crazy ride, the things that I've learned. So with the new book by Bradley Edwards coming out, it offers some new information that we don't know, and it also offers a good refresher course on some of the things that we might have talked about or some of the things that we already know. And in the article we have tonight from the Daily Mail, there's some more from the book Relentless Pursuit by Bradley Edwards, and we're going to get into that since all the other stuff was so interesting. We're going to add this to the catalog as well, and that way, if you're still on the fence maybe about purchasing the book or getting it from your library or whatever it may be, maybe this will give you more of a reason to go out and get it, because if you're spending time with me here on this podcast on a day in and day out basis, and you're interested in this case the way most of us are, I just think that it's a great idea for your own benefit to grab the book so that you're locked in, right? And especially right now, it's not like any of us are really going anywhere unless you're an essential employee, especially here in the United States. We're not doing much right now, so it's the perfect time to grab yourself a book, curl up, read it, Audible, whatever it may be, and then in another couple of weeks, we can really discuss it, right? We can really talk about what was going on inside of the book, etc., etc. I don't want to give any spoilers out in case people haven't read it yet, obviously. So we'll just use what is put out in the Daily Mail. I won't go into detail about what I've heard in the book, at least for a couple of weeks, giving everybody a chance to read it. But I'll tell you what, the information that we're getting in there, it's good stuff. And the stuff that we're getting in these articles by Bradley Edwards is awesome. Really good stuff, adds a lot of context, puts a little color in the painting, right? So tonight's article is from the Daily Mail. The headline, Jeffrey Epstein's ideal type was the youngest looking girl with breasts, says dead financier, pedophile, computer programmer in new book. As author claims Bill Clinton withheld helpful information about the pervert. Boy, that's a lot to unpack for a headline, huh? That's a whole lot to unpack for a headline. So we're going to see what the article has to say about all of this. This article was written by Martin Gould. Jeffrey Epstein viewed women as nothing more than a life support system for a vagina. A new book about the perverted child molester reveals. Well, that doesn't shock me. We all know how Jeffrey Epstein rolled, right? We know how he felt about people in general, and we know by his actions and the way he conducted himself, the way he felt about women. So we know that that's obviously not a stretch of the imagination to think that's the sort of mentality that Jeffrey Epstein had. And the twisted financier, pedophile, admitted his ideal was the youngest looking girl with breasts. We all know Jeffrey Epstein's a pedophile. We all know that he's a perverted son of a bitch. But again, it adds some color. It adds context when we're hearing it from somebody like Bradley Edwards or this gentleman here who was the computer programmer who worked closely with Epstein. It has a little bit more weight than just rumor or innuendo, right? When you're getting a sourced comment from somebody who names themselves, etc., it always carries more weight. Reichardt von Wolfschild, well, that's a heck of a name, huh? Reichardt von Wolfschild, a computer programmer who worked closely with Epstein before turning on him, makes both claims in a new book, Relentless Pursuit, by Bradley Edwards, the attorney who dogged Epstein for the last 11 years of his life. Wow, so okay, these are new claims in the book. Pretty interesting. I've never heard of Reichardt von Wolfschild as of yet. So again, see why this is so important, why we have to be here every single day going through these articles, making sure we don't miss anything, making sure we're on top of everything in this case. Because at the end of the day, when all's said and done, when this case is in the past and all of these survivors finally get their justice, we're going to have one hell of a story to look back on. We're going to have one hell of a story to look back on. When this whole entire trafficking ring gets scattered to the four corners of the earth and all of these people face justice, we're going to be able to look back on all of this stuff and say, wow, these people aren't above the law. These people can be stopped. Because I truly believe when all is said and done that that's what we're going to see in this case. We're going to see a lot more of people being held responsible for their actions. And it's just a matter of time right now. The pandemic has bought them some time. There's no doubt about that, because there's obviously, things are at a fevered pitch. We're about to hit peak state in a lot of places. So, the news is focused on that. The coverage is focused on that. But when all is said and done, and it will pass, the pandemic will pass, I truly believe that the outrage that you're going to see in the populace and the people in general over this Epstein case is going to be even larger than you see now. Because even people I know personally, and obviously I'm wrapped up in this case 100%, even people I know personally that I'm friends with don't know all of the ins and outs yet of this case. And I can't tell you how many of them now have the time to sit around and listen to the podcast and listen to it on a regular basis. And I can't tell you how many emails I've gotten from them or phone calls or text messages like, are you kidding me with this shit? And a lot of people are starting to wake up to what's going on, and a lot of people are starting to realize that there's a whole bunch of BS being pulled on the citizens of not only America, but the citizens of the world. Epstein spent most of his time with Reichardt talking about formulaic systems that might be invented to get young girls, Edwards wrote. Wow. I mean, it doesn't shock me, again, that Epstein's talking like this, but it does shock me that this information is coming out now, and I'd like to hear from this Mr. Reichardt fella. Epstein expressed the view that women were a life support system for a vagina, so he wanted to discuss the statistical analysis of the marketplace and new ways for finding girls. This guy wanted to have, an algorithm written for him that would help him find girls or something. Jeffrey Epstein was, honestly, I read a whole lot, right? Even before this case, I was always reading more than I should be probably about all kinds of weird topics as well. And Jeffrey Epstein is by far one of the sickest people I have ever read about ever in my whole entire life. And every single time we read another article about him where we find out another piece of news like this, the way he, talked about women, etc., it just reinforces my opinions of this man and how sick he was, and how there was no end to his want for his, God, I don't even know what I want to say here. His desire to satiate his own lust, I guess I should say. That's probably the best way to explain it. His desire to satiate his own lust, no matter how sick and perverse and disgusting those desires were, they meant everything to him. That's all he cared about. That's all he thought about. And even when he was talking to, his computer programmer, obviously, or whoever else, it was always, at the very least, a roundabout way talking about young girls. And that's why I find it hard to believe when anyone says that they spent an ample amount of time with Jeffrey Epstein and they didn't know what he was up to and they didn't know what he was about. He admitted that he knew nothing about computers, but he thought the internet might hold the key for meeting volumes of young females in a short time. Edwards writes, von Wolfschild saw Epstein, who died in prison last year, as a lion looking for prey. Yeah, that's a good explanation for what Epstein was. Although, you know what? Actually, that's a great explanation, because we know in a lion pack, the male lion doesn't do any of the hunting, right? The male lion hangs out and the females of the pack go out and do the hunting. And that's exactly what occurred within Jeffrey Epstein's criminal organization. Jeffrey Epstein laid back and waited while his lieutenants like Helen and Ghislaine Maxwell and Leslie Groff and Marcin Kova and Adriana Ross, they went out and they did the hunting, right? They went out, they found the girls, brought them back, and then Jeffrey Epstein did the devouring. And that's a pretty good example right there. I definitely think that's a pretty good example. That prey were girls who were, according to an old definition, nubile, as Epstein put it, the youngest looking girl with breasts. And I know for a fact, folks, that they use that word, that exact word, nubile. I've spoken to the survivor who says that that's one of the exact words that they used. So again, that lends credence to what we're reading here in this article. A lot of times I'll read stuff in these articles and I'll be rolling my eyes as I'm reading it, because some of these sources that they're putting out there, like Laura Goldman, we don't know if we could trust Laura Goldman. We don't know what her deal is, and even if she is so-called speaking for Maxwell, she's passing on whatever message Maxwell wants her to pass on. At the most, she's a useful idiot. But when we hear stuff like this that can be corroborated, and we know that that's the exact language, I'm talking the exact word that was used by Ghislaine Maxwell, then we know that what we're hearing from the rest of these articles and what we're hearing from this witness is legit. And that's important, to be able to vet the things people say. And it's important that we do that. Even after he was charged with having underage sex, he did not see that he had done anything wrong, Edwards wrote. Of course he didn't. In his world, in his life, what he did was not wrong. That's how they roll. That's okay. That's part of their, part and parcel for the way that they conduct themselves in so-called high society. But after being jailed in Florida, he did feel the need to be more careful, and so he brought on von Wolfschild. Is ironic, huh? The guy's name's von Wolfschild, and Epstein brought him on so he could be more careful, so he could be more protected, so he brings on von Wolfschild. Epstein was not going to stop his sex abuse or change his thinking about girls simply because he had been caught in Palm Beach and jailed for a few months under a cushy deal. He couldn't stop. This was his way of life. It was what drove him. Again, definitely. This was his thing. This was who he was. This was so ingrained in who he was and inside of his disgusting, disturbed brain that there was zero chance that Epstein was ever going to change. No jail time would have ever changed him. He should have been chemically castrated. That's the only chance the whole world would have had to avoid this man, abusing people. Right? If they weren't going to keep him caged, he should have been chemically castrated, because there is zero chance a man like this is ever going to change. It's just like a serial killer. A serial killer does not stop unless they die or they're caught. And Jeffrey Epstein is no different. The mindset is no different. With von Wolfschild's help, Edwards writes, he was just looking for more sophisticated and technologically advanced ways to find more girls and pursue them with less risk. The only thing jail had taught him was to be more careful and not get caught. Well, yeah. When you get that kind of light sentence, a slap on the wrist, just a little kick in the pants, your ear twirled, yeah, that's what happens. Why would you worry about the next time around? Why would you worry about the consequences when there are no consequences? Edwards' book details his fight to bring Epstein and his madam, aka co-conspirator, Ghislaine Maxwell, to justice following the financier, pedophile's, sweetheart deal in Palm Beach. He was sentenced to 18 months in jail, most of which he was allowed to spend days at his office at the Florida Science Foundation, which Edwards called a do-nothing company. I'll take it a step further. I think that that Science Foundation should also be checked into for money laundering purposes. Who sent money there? How much money left there? Where was the money going? What was it used for? Was all their tax paperwork in order? These are things that are important. Remember, Al Capone got nailed on taxes. Why not Jeffrey Epstein's associates? While there, Edwards says Epstein would talk on the phone to his various employees working at his various mansions around the world, send emails to his former and current girlfriends, including survivors of his sex trafficking operation, and continue to arrange for women to be flown to him for sexual purposes. And remember, this was all while he was under arrest. This is while he should have been in a prison cell rotting away. He was, hanging out at his science foundation, quote-unquote science foundation, making these phone calls, setting up other girls to be brought into him, etc., etc. The two-tier justice system. Isn't it great, folks? Isn't it fine? Isn't it lovely? Aren't you happy that it protects us all? Aren't you happy that it's there for all of us? What a joke. What an absolute joke. When he was supposed to be spending time behind bars, Epstein, full name Jeffrey Edward Epstein, even gave himself a new email address. jeevacation@gmail.com. jeevacation@gmail.com. It was pretty apropos considering his jail time was by most standards a vacation, Edwards writes. Wow. Again, look how brazen Epstein is. Look how brazen his co-conspirators are. Look how brazen all of these people are who are involved with Epstein, how they think they got away with it, the way they stroll around with their heads held high, the way they act righteous, the way they act like they have nothing to answer for. But really, in reality, it's coming, folks. The walls are going to come in on these people just like they did on Glenn Dubin and Les Wexner and the rest of them. These people they aren't going to last for long. They aren't going to last for long as soon as the public outrage increases the way I think it's going to increase. These people aren't going to be able to, drag their feet. They're going to have to answer questions. During evenings in the jail, Epstein was not referred to as an inmate like everyone else. Instead, he was discussed in reports as a client. And this is also what I'm talking about. Not just the co-conspirators. The people that were involved in making his life easy in jail, their names have to be on the paperwork that was signed. All the people that were involved in this, anybody who is collecting a pension or anything like that, or is still employed by the state, or has moved on to a federal position, they should automatically be in a state of review. And if it's found that they were complicit in this, they should have their benefits, their pensions cut right away. And if they're still working, they should be fired. Because it's unacceptable that Jeffrey Epstein was looked at as a client and not a prisoner. Add that up with all the other negligence that occurred at the state level, and you have yourself a nice big pie of this is real disgusting, gross, and unacceptable is what you have. Because it's unacceptable that the prosecutor's office could pitch such a deal to Jeffrey Epstein and treat him like he's somebody special while he's doing his little measly sentence that you gave him. It needs to be looked into, and the people who were involved, who signed off on it, who were in charge, who gave the okay, there needs to be consequences for them as well. Because he was, according to internal sheriff's office memos, poorly versed in jail routine, the sheriff authorized for his cell door to be left unlocked and be given liberal access to the attorney room where a TV will be installed. I mean, really? Do you think that would happen for you or me or anybody you know? They're going to leave your door open for you. Nah, go ahead and go into the lawyer's room. Watch as much TV as you want. No big deal, Jeffrey. You're only a child molester. You're only a human trafficker. But we're going to hook you up. Ask yourselves, why was he given this treatment? Why was he treated so much differently than even other billionaires? And really ask yourself that question. Edward details Epstein's friendship with two presidents, Bill Clinton and Donald Trump, although he says he has no evidence that either abused young girls during the time they spent with him. Again, I reiterated that point earlier. There's no evidence that Bill Clinton or Donald Trump were involved in any sort of abuse when it came to the girls. But that doesn't get them off the hook when it comes to enabling. Both of them were involved with enabling Jeffrey Epstein. Obviously, Clinton to a higher degree when you talk about, the charities, et cetera, but it doesn't matter. Both men were enabling him, and Donald Trump needs to answer for that just as much as Bill Clinton does. Just like anybody else who was running around with Jeffrey Epstein, sitting around having a laugh with them, going to his house, going to his parties, any of these people that were doing that, especially after 2008, all of you people have questions to answer, because don't think that enabling this man and enabling, in essence, his crimes by looking the other way, even though you know who he is, and giving him the credibility by spending time with him, don't think that that's going to go unnoticed, and don't think that there aren't going to be people that are demanding answers from you, because there are. And again, it doesn't matter who it is. From Trump to Clinton to Jeff Bezos to Bill Gates, whoever, every single person that was involved with Jeffrey Epstein, that enabled him, that gave him credibility, and of course, the people who were involved in the direct abuse of the survivors, all of them have questions to answer. He says he interviewed Trump, but Clinton would not see him. I've never said or thought that Bill Clinton did anything wrong in connections with Ghislaine, Epstein, or their airplane rides, but by all appearances, Clinton had helpful information. I couldn't help but wonder why he wouldn't pick up the phone and tell us what he knew. Look, Clinton isn't Prince Andrew, I'll tell you that much. Bill Clinton isn't going to offer up nothing. All right? Bill Clinton is way too savvy for that. He's way too way too much of a political animal for that, and he's not going to be caught up and baited by anything such as this. The only way you'll ever get Bill Clinton on record is if he's subpoenaed, and he has to go on record, because Bill Clinton is certainly, he's a lot of things, but Bill Clinton is not a dumb man. Trump was different, though. He was eager to help. He said his famous quote about Epstein, "He's a lot of fun to be with." It is even said that he likes beautiful women as much as I do, and many of them are on the younger side, was actually written by Epstein himself for an Esquire article and put in the future president's mouth. Look, I don't know about all of that. We know that Donald Trump makes a lot of claims. I don't know if that's a fact or if it's not a fact. It does seem like something that Trump would say, in my opinion, right? Trump's always making crazy, wildish, outlandish statements, and we're talking about back in the day when he wasn't the president. We're talking about when, look, we know Trump is a womanizer as well. We know Trump is a guy that has not respected the sanctity of his marriage. We all know that. And, I don't know if I believe that, Epstein wrote that quote for himself and put it in the Esquire article. I guess we'd have to hear from the author of the Esquire article and see what they have to say about it. But again, it does seem like something Trump would say, to me anyway. Seeing nothing wrong with that, and having been asked for a favor long before the accusations of Epstein's abuse had surfaced, Trump agreed. Trump did say that he always saw Epstein around younger girls, but to his knowledge, none were underage, Edwards writes. Again, that's a cop-out. None of them were underage, to your knowledge. But I'm sure, Mr. President, that you heard people talking about them. I'm sure, Mr. President, you heard the scuttlebutt. And these are the facts. You didn't do anything about it either. Not until you had your falling out with Epstein. But up until that point, he was still at your clubs. He was still at your golf club. You guys were still running in the same circles. So, look, there's plenty of people who enabled Jeffrey Epstein. I asked about a rumor I had heard that Mr. Trump had expelled Epstein from his Mar-a-Lago club for trying to take home a member's 15-year-old daughter. He paused before saying something along those lines happened. And again, I don't put that past Trump either. Trump, that something comes to Trump's attention, Trump's going to say, all right, look, this guy got to go. I'm not getting sued over this shit. I'm not saying Trump's going to toss him because he's, the morality says he has to do it. But I'm saying from a legal standpoint, no, he doesn't want to get sued. He doesn't want to be in trouble, right? So Trump, I can definitely see Trump throwing him out of Mar-a-Lago. But for Trump to act like he hardly knew Jeffrey Epstein, I don't buy that for a second. I don't buy that for a second at all. They were definitely buddies at one point. They were definitely rolling around together at one point. They were definitely breaking bread. Now, again, just like with Bill Clinton, I want to be very clear. I'm not saying Donald Trump was abusing any of these girls. I don't have any evidence to prove that. But what I will say is he had a much cozier relationship with Epstein than he likes to put on. And those are just the facts, folks. During his time in jail, Epstein had famous visitors, including magician David Copperfield and Epstein's lawyer, Alan Dershowitz. We were never able to depose Copperfield due to a number of legal and logistical roadblocks, Edwards wrote. I don't even know what that means, honestly. How is David Copperfield so powerful that there's legal roadblocks of even talking to him? For me, in my opinion, what must have happened is the Epstein legal team probably stepped in and made it difficult one way or the other. Because why is Copperfield going to visit Epstein in prison? They were that close, huh? What did David Copperfield have to hear from Jeffrey Epstein so bad, or tell Jeffrey Epstein so bad, that he had to go visit him in quote-unquote prison? Edwards touches on accusations that Dershowitz was involved in abusing young girls, writing, "We gathered as much information as we possibly could about Dershowitz, given his lack of cooperation with us." Again, just like Bill Clinton, Dershowitz is not a stupid man. He's not going to cooperate with you. He's not going to give you anything that is not compelled from him, because he knows how to navigate the legal system. He knows how to jump through the hoops. And he knows that he has people that are going to be favorable to him sprinkled throughout the justice system. Alan Dershowitz is a very tricky character, and it's obvious why people are very cautious when dealing with Dershowitz, because he's known to sue, and he loves to drag people's name through the mud on all of these shows that he's always invited to. So, he'll get on there and he'll, talk trash about Virginia Roberts or the lawyers, et cetera, et cetera. But then when it's a return favor and someone says anything about him, he wants to jump up and sue right away. Dershowitz has adamantly denied previous accusations of wrongdoing in relation to Epstein's teenage girls. Edwards does include other stories he claims he had heard about the famed attorney. In one, he writes, a neighbor from Dershowitz's condo building in Miami called to recount in great detail how she would witness Dershowitz dressed in a way to hide his identity while he walked the beach to look at topless girls sunbathing near their condo. Because of this behavior, the woman told Dershowitz's wife that he was a pervert. She claimed that in response, Dershowitz got in her face and threatened her, forcing her to go to the police in fear for her safety. Yeah, it doesn't shock me. I could see Dershowitz, those glasses that you wear that have the nose attached to them. I could see Dershowitz wearing those glasses with the nose and the mustache attached to them and running around in like a trench coat and a hat like Inspector Gadget and peeping on women. I could totally see that. Other people telephoned to tell us how they had seen Dershowitz skinny dipping on Martha's Vineyard. Oh my God, what a sight. That would be like seeing the Crypt Keeper take a skinny dip. Pass on that, thank you very much. One Vineyard resident recalled walking up to a volleyball game where Dershowitz was playing nude. What? A volleyball game in the nude? And Dershowitz has the audacity to try and go after the way other people live their lives. And look, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with this guy wanting to play some volleyball in the nude. I guess, if that's your thing, I'm not here to judge you. I don't care. I don't care what anybody does, honestly, as long as it's between two consenting adults. Two consenting adults. Hey, the world's your oyster, buddy. Have a blast. Have a great time. Want to play volleyball in the nude? Play volleyball in the nude. Who am I to tell you to stop doing that? But getting massages from underage girls at your boy Jeffrey Epstein's house and then breaking out the excuse, well, it's okay because I kept my underpants on? That is unacceptable, my friend. That must be called out, and that must be completely and utterly talked about. Because, Mr. Dershowitz, you have a lot to answer for here, sir. You've been credibly accused by Virginia Roberts, okay, of abusing her. And your only defense is you keep talking about all this evidence you have, but we've seen none of it. And your only defense so far has been to talk trash and to try and drag her name through the mud and to try and drag the name of her lawyers through the mud. Meanwhile, you haven't provided one iota, one scintilla of evidence proving that what she says is a lie. Meanwhile, she has pictures, receipts, etc., etc. So I can't even imagine this Dershowitz guy truly believing the stuff he's talking about at this point. In my opinion, Alan Dershowitz, the only reason that he is still, able to get away with stuff like this and able to continue his warpath in the courts with threatening people is because he is such a entrenched lawyer in that realm. He knows so many people and he knows the law inside and out. He knows just exactly what he can get away with and what he can't get away with. But eventually it's going to come back to bite him. Eventually Dershowitz is going to bite off more than he can chew, in my opinion, and that's going to be the day where he gets himself in a lot of trouble. Edwards does recount alleged abuse stories involving Britain's Prince Andrew. Johanna Schoberg, one of Epstein's survivors, recalled sitting on one of the prince's knees while other accuser, Virginia Roberts, was on the other. While the two girls were in his lap, Ghislaine took out a puppet figure of Prince Andrew and placed the puppet's hand on Virginia's breast, at which point Prince Andrew placed his hand on Johanna's breast. Everyone laughed. Other celebrities mentioned in the book include Michael Jackson, who had been enough of an Epstein acquaintance to pay him a visit in Palm Beach, and Matt Groening, the creator of The Simpsons, who agreed to draw a picture of Bart Simpson on Jeffrey Epstein's letterhead as a favorite of Virginia Roberts. Roberts finally got away from Epstein by running off to Australia when she was supposed to be in Thailand. There did come a time when the debauched lifestyle of Epstein's cultish world became too much for even a strong soul like Virginia, Edwards writes. Yeah, I mean, you blame her? You can only be so strong, right? I commend her for getting away from this guy when she did, for making that bold and shrewd move to get away from him when she was in Thailand. She recalled that when she was 19 years old, after having been involved in the Epstein sex cult for 2 years, she was on an island with him and Maxwell when they made a new surprising proposition to her. They wanted her to carry his baby. She would have to sign a contract agreeing that the baby was not her own, but the legal child of Epstein and Maxwell. And we covered all of that earlier, and that stuff is it's just crazy to even think about. Imagine being this young girl, and these crazy sons of bitches come at you with that nonsense. I don't blame her for getting away in Thailand. I would have done the same exact thing, 100%, not even a question. I would have definitely tried to get away from these people as well. Because what this poor girl went through, that's the stuff that horror movies are made out of. I mean, worse, right? Because it's real life. It's not like some fake guys coming at you in your dreams or something. No, this is real life. This is a real life monster. Yeah, they say, oh, monsters don't exist. Well, they do exist. And Jeffrey Epstein is the embodiment of a monster, and so is Ghislaine Maxwell, in my opinion. So, folks, again, if you haven't picked up the book yet, you definitely should. This is just a little bit of what's inside of this book, and I'm a few hours in, and I plan on pounding through it the next few days and getting to the end and, soaking it all in, because it's all very useful information, and it's very informative, and it's very interesting to get an inside look into what Bradley Edwards' perspective was as he was chasing this case down. If you'd like to contact me, you can do that at bobbycapucci@protonmail.com. That's BOBBYCAPUCCI@protonmail.com. You can also find me on Twitter at BOBBY_CAPUCCI. Also, if you haven't checked out the new podcast yet, you can check that out inside of the description box at the link for COVID-19, the pandemic that changed everything. All right, folks, I will be back tomorrow with the usual daily drop and the morning update. I hope you all have an amazing evening.